On my wedding day, a stranger burst into the ceremony. He begged me in tears to return his $300,000. Fei, since you're marrying someone else, could you return the bride price I gave you? My mother needs that money to save her life. The once joyous venue turned eerie. My fiancé silently tucked the ring away. I desperately tried to explain that I didn't know him, but my best friend interrupted with indignation. Fei, I told you to settle all your affairs before the wedding, but you wouldn't listen. She turned to the stranger, your money's gone. She's spent it all. Hearing this, the man's eyes turned blood red, and he suddenly pulled out a fruit knife and plunged it into my abdomen. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment the man burst into my wedding. When the hall doors burst open, I instinctively protected my stomach. As that crazed face drew closer, I forgot about the ongoing ceremony and shrank back, but my long dress tripped me, and I fell backward. My heart plummeted. The stranger, who had killed me in my previous life, had appeared again. Just moments ago, Alex, my groom, had gazed at me tenderly, promising to love me for life. I reached out to him through tears of joy, anticipating the moment he would slip the wedding ring onto my finger. I had a secret ready to burst from my heart. I planned to tell him during our embrace that our love would continue through a new life growing within me. I couldn't wait to see his joy when he learned about my pregnancy. But fate had played a cruel joke on me. In my previous life, before I could speak those words, the stranger who suddenly appeared destroyed everything. I couldn't even make out his face before he dropped to his knees in front of all the guests. He clutched my dress desperately and called out my name with precision, demanding I return his $300,000 bride price. Fei, since you're marrying someone else, could you return my bride price? My mother needs it to save her life. His face contorted with pain as he explained that his mother was in emergency care, needing expensive surgery to save her life, and that I had taken his money under the pretense of a bride price. I stood frozen, bewildered by the absurd scene before me. Alex quietly put away the wedding ring and stepped aside without a word. The guests fell silent, staring at me with loaded gazes. I shivered, realizing this wasn't an act, and quickly tried to help the man up. I wanted to tell him he had the wrong person. I didn't know him at all. Just then, my best friend Jenny rushed forward, positioning herself between us. I felt touched, thinking my closest friend was coming to my defense at this crucial moment. But the next second, I saw her looking at me with disappointment, her voice filled with righteous anger. Fei, I warned you to settle your romantic debts before the wedding, but you wouldn't listen. She turned to the stranger, your money's gone. She's spent it all. I stared in shock at my closest friend slandering me in front of my future husband, feeling a chill spread through my body. If others didn't understand me, that was one thing, but she had been my friend since middle school. 12 years of friendship should have meant we'd go through fire and water for each other. How could she defame me in front of so many people? She looked at Alex, their eyes meeting briefly. By the time I realized something was wrong, it was too late. You slut, die. The stranger lunged forward like a madman, pulling out a switchblade and stabbing viciously at my abdomen. I looked down, watching helplessly as his hand twisted the blade inside me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body quickly went numb, leaving only despair to grip me painfully. Just yesterday, the doctor had told me my baby had developed a heartbeat. I had planned to tell Alex at our wedding that he was going to be a father. I had imagined his joy doubling at the news. But hope had shattered. I closed my eyes in silent grief. Yet, unexpectedly, I was reborn. As I was about to fall, Alex quickly steadied me. His eyes were full of concern. Careful, honey. I was still shaken, uncertain whether his tenderness would remain after the stranger spoke. Sure enough, the man rushed over just like in my previous life, grabbing my legs, and with his first words, the venue fell into dead silence. His sorrowful cries rang out, and my vision blurred as everything seemed to darken. With the previous life's experience vivid in my mind, I held my abdomen even tighter, fearing the blade from my memories could strike at any moment. Heaven had given me another chance at life. For the sake of the little life inside me, I knew every second counted in this race against death. In my previous life, until my dying breath, I never understood why this stranger was so convinced I had scammed him out of $300,000. I needed to find the truth for myself and for my baby. Having made up my mind, under Alex and everyone's bewildered stares, I forced myself to stay calm, trying to speak in the gentlest voice possible to soothe the men before me. I know you're upset right now. Don't worry, I'll help you. Hearing this, the man's body stiffened, and he raised his head stiffly, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief, so it was about the money after all. I told him my phone wasn't with me, so I couldn't transfer the money right now. As soon as I finished speaking, he seemed to see through my attempt to buy time. In an instant, he stood up, pressing the blade against my back, its cold touch seeping through my wedding dress. "I don't have time. I need it now." His tone was both pleading and threatening. The chill returned, and I knew our current position looked inappropriately intimate to the onlookers, as if he were embracing me. But mindful of his knife and concerned for my baby's safety, I could only follow the stranger out slowly under Alex's disappointed gaze. We would go to the hotel room to get my phone and transfer the money. As we passed Jenny, her expression was strange, half pleased and half worried. For the first time, I couldn't read her eyes. I remembered how after Jenny had rushed back from out of town and met Alex for the first time before the wedding, she kept asking if I had thought everything through. Her words seemed to hint at disapproval of my relationship with Alex. She had been single for 5 years since her last heartbreak, and I thought she was just being protective, wanting me to carefully consider my marriage decision. But in my previous life, just before I died, I suddenly realized something from the way she had locked eyes with Alex. My best friend Jenny apparently had feelings for my future husband. So was this stranger's appearance arranged by Jenny? I couldn't help but shiver. She had orchestrated all this for a man. How dedicated of her. Seeing Jenny worried about being exposed and trying to follow us, I stopped her. In the hotel changing room, I promptly took out my phone. If money was what this man wanted, that would make things simpler. I got straight to the point. "I don't know who told you what, but that's okay. I can give you the full amount. If you cooperate and tell me who put you up to this, I can give you even more." I quietly waited for his response. Once he revealed the truth, I could make whoever was behind this pay back every cent. And that person might just end up behind bars. But what I didn't expect was another man, in a red jacket, suddenly lunging out. Cursing, he violently pushed me down. I crashed into the screen, glass shards scattering everywhere, cutting into my body as blood gushed out. Panicked and in pain, I screamed, my belly. The man hesitated for a moment, then like a maniac, grabbed the scattered glass shards and began stabbing frantically at my stomach. "You loose woman, you flirt with everyone, you deserve to die. You think you deserve to get married and have children. You don't." Before I could struggle, my arms went limp. Why was this happening? They all claimed to have dated me and that I had scammed them out of their money. But I had never met any of them. How could things have become so absurd? Who would want to harm me like this? With this lingering resentment, I closed my eyes once again. I suddenly opened my eyes, the stinging pain of glass shards in my body returning. I nervously looked at my abdomen. Thankfully, all was well. Still dazed, I watched the hall doors burst open again, and as the stranger rushed toward me, my nails involuntarily dug into my flesh. The scene before me was familiar yet terrifying, like falling into a bottomless abyss. No matter how I tried to escape, countless hands seemed to drag me back into darkness. I realized I was caught in an infinite loop. It seemed that if I couldn't uncover the truth and stop the killer, I might die countless times in this cycle. Thinking that my baby might never be safely born, my heart ached again. I frowned, watching the approaching stranger, and quickly told Alex, "Whatever this man is about to say, don't believe it." Alex paused briefly, perhaps sensing my tension, and reassuringly squeezed my hand, his gaze determined. This time, he stood in front of me, blocking the man who tried to approach. In his fitted suit, he looked like a nobleman, elegant yet cool. "Sir, the ceremony is in progress. Please wait until it's over to discuss whatever's on your mind." The man was unhappy about being blocked, his sinister gaze scanning up and down between me and Alex. As the champagne tower collapsed, he shouted, "If we wait any longer, my mother will die." He suddenly pushed Alex aside and lunged straight for me. Panic flashed across Alex's face. It was too late to catch him. In this life or death moment, I forced myself to stay calm. Wearing this long dress, there was no way I could outrun him. If I tried to negotiate peacefully like last time, there was no guarantee we wouldn't encounter another man in a red jacket. So this time, I needed to stabilize his emotions first, then find a chance to call the police. Having made up my mind, I took a deep breath and used my most peaceful tone to try to calm him. "Don't panic. I know your mother needs money urgently, but you can't lose control. She needs you right now." As I spoke, I tried to signal Alex with my eyes to call the police. But Alex didn't notice my glance, getting up from the floor to try reasoning with the stranger again. "Friend, let's talk this through. If you need something, we'll try our best to help, but could you please stop bothering my wife?" Hearing the word wife, the stranger suddenly laughed coldly. Without another word, he pulled out the switchblade hidden in his sleeve and slashed at Alex, instantly drawing blood from his arm. The suit quickly turned crimson. The bewildered guests began to scream, the scene descended into chaos, and some of the braver ones tried to come help. The stranger suddenly grabbed me from behind, holding the knife to my throat. "Back off, everyone back off, or I'll kill her." His emotions had spiraled into madness again, but the crowd had no choice but to slowly disperse, allowing him to drag me away. Then my hands were bound and I was placed in the passenger seat, watching the road become increasingly deserted, my heart in my throat. My mind was in turmoil, unsure what to do. The car was eerily quiet, with only the sound of our shallow breathing. The man couldn't hold back anymore and murmured my name. "Fei Fei, you deceived me." His voice was full of resentment. Seeing that I didn't deny it, he poured out his story. Through his rambling, I learned his name was Li Ming, and 6 months ago, he had been attracted to a photo on a dating app, a photo of a girl with a radiant smile. He had tried messaging her, and she had responded enthusiastically. As they shared their life aspirations and passions online, they gradually fell in love. I grew more shocked as I listened. Forget dating apps, I would think twice before even adding someone on social media. My identity had been stolen. And whoever stole it knew my detailed information. They must be someone I know. Jenny's image flashed through my mind, and I shuddered at the thought that she might have scammed numerous people using my identity. Being betrayed by a friend was painful, but I couldn't show it now. I could only press my lips together and think of a strategy. Li Ming was too emotional right now. Telling him the truth might enrage him, making him think it was just an excuse to avoid responsibility. Seeing my silence, Li Ming suddenly changed his tone. "Fei Fei, I forgive you, let's make up. I'll take you to see my mom in the hospital right now. Tell her we're getting married, and you won't need to return the bride price, okay? I know I'm poor now and can't give you happiness, but I have potential. Fei Fei, don't you believe in me?" He grew increasingly agitated, and seeing no response from me, his expression gradually twisted. "Fine, let's start over." Under pressure, I nervously agreed, hoping this might be my chance for survival. Suddenly, Li Ming slammed on the brakes, stopping the car. To make it more convincing, I didn't avoid his gaze and slowly forced a smile. He suddenly released his grip, his whole body relaxing as he leaned back, laughing happily. My suspended heart finally settled. Was it over? This cursed loop. I looked down at my belly and couldn't help but smile. The next second, my arm was gripped tightly and Li Ming yanked me towards him, his mouth forcing itself onto mine. My heart raced again as I instinctively struggled. A heavy desire suddenly rose in Li Ming's eyes, and he simply straddled me, violently pressing his lips against mine. Nausea surged in my chest. He was trying to force himself on me in the car. I couldn't help but fight back with all my strength to avoid him. In the struggle, I managed to hook open the car door and rolled out. Seeing Li Ming's foot quickly step down after me, I made a desperate decision and tumbled down the steep cliff beside us. Back at the wedding venue again, Alex was smiling as he held my hand, about to put on the ring that would seal our love. I suddenly felt that even a second of tenderness now was a luxury. When Li Ming burst through the doors, I kept my eyes fixed on Jenny. She was the most likely person to have used my identity for fraud, only she knew my habits and preferences so well. She thought that because we weren't in the same city, she could flirt with others using my identity, freely sharing my thoughts and secrets. Remembering how Li Ming said he didn't mind the ugly scar from stitches on my inner thigh, I felt sick again. This time I decided to take the initiative. Amid the guests' gasps, I quickly ran to Jenny's side, ready to push her out if necessary. Li Ming was clearly watching my movements. He hesitated for a moment before changing direction. He still maintained his frantic appearance about his dying mother. Only this time, I hid behind Jenny. I imagined the scene of her words angering Li Ming and stayed prepared. Jenny leaned close to my ear with a light laugh and said, "Having second thoughts about the wedding? Getting someone to put on this show? You're something else. If I were Alex, I'd stay far away from you in the future." For a moment, my whole body went numb and I realized I'd made a foolish decision. Right, Jenny had always advised me to be careful about marriage. Even in the days before the wedding, she still said that if I suddenly changed my mind, she wouldn't mind helping me in any way. Her eyes had been wet as she insisted I must find happiness. So she thought I had hired Li Ming to break off the wedding. I watched as Jenny tilted her head back, pushing her chest forward. "Your money won't be." I knew what she was about to tell Li Ming and quickly covered her mouth. Just then, a flash of light gleamed from Li Ming's sleeve. I immediately pushed over the nearby table and pulled Jenny into a run, while shouting for others to call the police. But my dress was too long and soon someone grabbed it. Seeing the blade suddenly appear before me, I gritted my teeth and took a gamble. "I have money. I have $600,000 in my account. You can have it all. I'll transfer it right now." Li Ming's hand hung in the air as I nervously shouted, "I owe you. I must pay you back this money." He hesitated. Then there was a loud bang. Jenny had quietly appeared behind him and struck him hard with a chair. People rushed forward and Li Ming was quickly subdued. I collapsed against Jenny, breathing heavily after the close call. I didn't want to think anymore. Once the police investigated, everything would become clear. Most importantly, my baby was finally safe. Alex ran over with a worried face, his brows tightly knitted. Still shaken, I burst into tears and threw myself into his arms. Honey, I don't know him. Alex was trembling slightly but tried to appear calm as he stroked my hair. It's okay, sweetheart, don't be afraid. The bad guy's been caught. I couldn't hold back anymore and urgently pulled his hand to my belly. Honey, we're having a baby. Suddenly, Alex was frozen in shock. Standing nearby, Alex's sister Claire, who was 7 months pregnant, was the first to react. She waddled over with her pregnant belly, her round eyes fixed on my stomach for a long while. Tears suddenly streamed down her face as she happily grabbed my hand. Sister-in-law, my brother is so blessed. As she spoke, she glanced at Alex, who seemed still stunned, grinning foolishly. Suddenly, a figure flashed beside us and I quickly pushed Claire away. A sharp knife plunged into my chest. It was the man in the red jacket from the changing room. I smiled bitterly, having forgotten that the scammer had used my photo to deceive more than one person. I turned my head to see Claire frightened, clutching Alex, and strangely felt their embrace looked intimate. I closed my eyes in shock. Countless images of Claire and Alex laughing and playing together flashed through my mind. Could it be? I jolted awake again, this time on the day before the wedding. I was at the bridal shop for my makeup trial. The autumn-winter weather was unpredictable. It had been sunny when we arrived, but now rain was drizzling down. Alex watched the window, his eyes full of concern. If it rains tomorrow, our outdoor wedding plans will be ruined. After contacting the wedding company to make backup plans, he put down the phone and smiled brightly. My wife will definitely be the most beautiful bride. How could we let her get rained on? He was handsome, attentive, and consistently gentle with me. I had countless times felt blessed by our meeting. 6 months ago, someone had drugged me at a bar, and he suddenly appeared, chasing away those who tried to approach me. My dress had been torn, and he gentlemanly covered my exposed skin with a blanket. He didn't take advantage of the situation, but took me home safely. Having been single for 26 years, it was my first time experiencing such tender care from a man. Though I was tipsy, I knew clearly that my heart had been moved in that moment. After experiencing several deaths, I was overwhelmed with emotion during these rare peaceful moments between us. Without hesitation, I hugged him tightly and told him about my pregnancy. Alex's eyes paused, showing the same look of disbelief as last time. The next second, he gently pushed me away. I felt somewhat dazed. Alex seemed awkward, too nervous to speak clearly. Hugging too tight, might it hurt the baby? I smiled with relief. Aren't all first-time fathers this nervous? But soon, my smile froze. Claire waddled in, pigeon-toed. My mood instantly sank. Claire was indeed strange. Like a radar, she could always interrupt my alone time with Alex. Alex would also refuse to show affection in front of Claire. He said that since Claire's husband had been sent abroad by his company before her pregnancy, she was insecure being pregnant alone, and particularly dependent on him as her brother. Our displays of affection would upset her. Thinking about it now, something felt off. Watching Claire quietly walk to Alex's side and softly call him brother, I suddenly remembered how Li Ming had said he especially loved hearing me call him brother in a coquettish voice. I shuddered, silently observing her. Li Ming had said he met me online 6 months ago. I belatedly realized that was exactly when I had met Claire. Lost in these thoughts, I shook my head, causing the makeup artist to accidentally brush my nose with the false eyelashes. Then I heard Claire giggling behind her hand as she tugged at Alex's sleeve. Brother, let's go for a walk. We're disturbing sister-in-law. Alex looked at me hesitantly, seeming both helpless and apologetic. Claire didn't wait for my response, smiling sweetly as she took out an umbrella and pushed Alex out the door. Through the glass window, I watched them intimately sharing an umbrella as they walked further away. My heart turned ice cold. I thought about how Claire would call Alex at exactly 10 p.m. during every one of our dates to make him come home. Every time she saw me in new clothes, she would sternly tell me, "Sister-in-law, you're dressed too provocatively. My brother doesn't like that." Once she even publicly said I dressed like a nightclub woman. If Alex hadn't comforted me afterward, saying his sister was spoiled and didn't know proper manners, I might have broken up with him long ago. Looking back now, Claire seemed to have impure thoughts about her brother. Her possessiveness toward him exceeded normal boundaries. If it was her perverted possessiveness of her brother that drove her to use my identity for fraud, to hurt me, I really couldn't forgive her. At this moment, I desperately wanted to know the truth, to know who was really behind my repeated deaths in this loop. I waited at the bridal shop until closing time before Claire finally appeared with Alex. She complained unhappily. Sister-in-law could have gone home by herself. Why did we have to come pick her up? Really? I coldly smiled and pulled Alex close. Darling, we're missing a bachelorette party, will you join me? Though I spoke to Alex, the words were meant for Claire. Sure enough, Claire's face immediately darkened. No. We have a curfew at home. In the past, I would have considered her pregnant status, but now, even though I was pregnant too, I wanted to challenge her. Sorry, but your brother and I will be family soon, and our home doesn't have a curfew. I clutched Alex's sleeve, my attitude resolute. Who's really your wife? Tell her. Of course, you can go with your sister, but then there's no need for tomorrow's wedding. I stared at him steadily, making him choose. Time ticked by slowly before he gradually pushed away Claire's hand. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief and pulled him away. Claire stomped her feet and stubbornly followed. At 7 months pregnant, her pelvis was compressed, making her need the bathroom after just a sip of water. I crossed my arms and mockingly laughed. If you come to a bar, you have to drink. If you won't drink, you should go home and rest. She glared at me with her round eyes, clearly annoyed. I deliberately leaned into Alex's embrace and, watching her twisted expression, pushed water toward her. All right, I'm not unreasonable. You can substitute water for alcohol. We'll drink together after you give birth. After making her drink several glasses, she finally couldn't hold it and stood up to find the bathroom. I took the chance to secretly take her phone, but she returned after stepping out. Sister-in-law, I'm not very comfortable. Could you help me? I felt somewhat frustrated, but once we entered the bathroom, Claire suddenly choked up and started crying. I stood there bewildered. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry, did you notice I've been targeting you? It's not my fault, it was your friend Jenny. I never expected Claire to say she had been targeting me because of Jenny. Jenny had told her that I was flirtatious and improper. That's why she always felt I wasn't good enough for her brother and tried to sabotage us. Tomorrow you'll officially become my sister-in-law. Can we let bygones be bygones? I really don't want my brother caught in the middle, suffering. Her cheeks were flushed, her face covered in tears and snot. I hesitated. I couldn't tell if she was being truthful or not. Claire simply took out her phone and turned on the speaker. Jenny's voice came through. Faye is just a shameless slut. You'll be miserable if she becomes your sister-in-law. I felt the world spinning. From the beginning, Jenny had disapproved of my relationship with Alex. When she learned about my wedding, she had sighed for a long time that day. So that's how it was. 12 hours before the wedding, I went to the police station that night to file a report. This time, the wedding proceeded as planned and Li Ming didn't appear. Jenny was in tears as she wished me lifelong happiness, while Claire stood awkwardly to the side. I wasn't feeling well but had to put on a brave face to play along. When Alex and I finally exchanged rings, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. When the police arrived, the previously chaotic venue fell silent. Jenny looked surprised and I let out a cold snort. The next moment, Claire was surrounded. Everything happened so suddenly Claire's eyes widened in disbelief. When the arrest warrant mentioned fraud charges, she looked at me. Sister-in-law, are you making a mistake? I curved my lips in a sardonic smile. Your performance was really good, but you didn't account for one thing. Jenny never uses the word slut when cursing, she only says tramp. And thanks to that recording, I confirmed you used a voice changer. So it was you all along, mimicking my voice to flirt with others. With these skills, you should have been a spy. What a shame you married early and had nothing better to do than these dirty tricks. Alex never expected that I, his new bride, would call the police on his sister. He stood there bewildered. I touched my newly placed wedding ring, still cold without warmth. It wouldn't matter if I took it off right now. Alex let out a slight sigh, then decisively grabbed my hand. Claire looked stunned, but the next second, she forced a bitter smile. I wish brother and sister-in-law eternal happiness. Claire was taken away. She confessed to using my identity for online fraud. But because of her pregnancy, she received a suspended sentence. I remained silent about this for a long time. Alex thought I felt guilty and comforted me, saying his sister had gone too far and needed to be taught a lesson. I shouldn't blame myself. He held me in his arms, his fingers dancing lightly on my belly, his eyes full of anticipation. At that moment, I again marveled at how fate had brought us together. Another weekend passed, and I was doing my usual cleaning. Since having our own home, I particularly enjoyed keeping it neat and tidy. I was humming while picking up waste paper from the desk when I accidentally bumped the mouse. Alex's computer suddenly lit up. He must have accidentally put it in sleep mode. So he could be careless too, I thought with amusement as I went to shut it down. Then I caught sight of a flashing icon in the toolbar. Curiosity made me click it. The next moment I froze. Why did Alex have voice-changing software on his computer? And there were files labeled Faye on it. In a daze, I fled from this home I had cherished so much. Images flashed through my mind like a revolving lantern, finally piecing everything together. What followed was a deep shattering of my heart. The entire meeting had been a setup from the start. Alex was a demon. I carefully prepared a table full of dishes. Alex smiled, saying he was blessed to have such a perfect wife. When he tried to hug me, I hurriedly avoided him, using the excuse of getting him rice. I feared that staying even a second longer would expose my anger. Alex ate with enthusiasm, praising my cooking, until his eyes grew unfocused and his head began to sway dizzily. Only then did he notice me sitting formally, staring at him with a cold face. "Alex, tell me, is Claire really your sister? Whose child is she carrying?" Panic flashed in his eyes, but he couldn't stand up. "Don't worry, I just added something, it won't harm your body." I spoke mournfully. "If you can't answer, I'll tell you. Claire isn't your sister, but your lover, and she's carrying your child. And you're both unemployed drifters with no money to raise a child. From the moment I stepped into that bar, I became your target. You knew I was well off and my family had money. You used my identity to scam others while planning to get your hands on my inheritance." I placed the printed WeChat conversation records in front of him. "After every date with me, you'd complain to Claire about not being able to stand my smell. You said once you transferred all the money, you'd divorce me and run away with her. Alex, you're quite the actor." He struggled to get up, his voice weak. "No, Faye, I wasn't acting. I fell in love with you. I really fell in love with you." I laughed mockingly. "You're still lying." With that, I turned away, wiping the tears from my cheeks, trembling as I reached for my phone to make a call. The moment the call connected, a broken plate slashed across my neck. A warm sensation swept over me as I fell backward, unable to speak anymore. Alex slowly stood up, looking down at me. "Why did you have to expose me? Why?" I finally adapted to being a perfect gentleman. "Do you know how hard that was? Why couldn't we just continue like this?" "Ha!" He let out a sharp scream, suddenly diving down to cover my face. "Don't look at me with those eyes." Back at the bridal shop again. The rain was getting heavier, and I came to my senses listening to it outside the window. Alex put away his phone, saying he'd asked the wedding company to move the ceremony indoors. I felt somewhat detached as he came over and placed his hand on my forehead, puzzled. "What's wrong?" "Not feeling well." A wave of nausea suddenly surged up, and I covered my chest, repeatedly dry heaving. "So disgusting." Just then, Claire waddled and pigeon-toed, swaying as she walked to Alex's side and took his arm. I finally realized Claire had been marking her territory all along. I'd been too love-blind to notice the signs. Seeing my reaction, Claire gave my belly a complicated look. She seemed to have guessed something. I lowered my eyes tiredly, saying the wedding dress was too tight as I retreated to the changing room to take it off. Through the door crack, I saw Claire forcefully hook her arms around Alex's neck, their eyes locked in an intimate gaze. Soon they were embracing shamelessly, kissing passionately. I drew in a sharp breath, turning away in disgust as I swiftly pulled out my phone to make a call. In a lowered voice, "Hello, I want to report identity theft and online fraud." The police arrived quickly, and only after Alex and Claire were taken away did I stumble out of the changing room. Jenny got the news and rushed to the bridal shop to pick me up. Seeing her again, I weakly leaned against her. "I'm sorry." Surprisingly, she was the first to apologize. She wiped away my tears, repeatedly emphasizing that she should have stood firm in stopping me from dating Alex. She had failed me. I felt somewhat sheepish as tears suddenly began flowing. She had said that Alex's appearance that night 6 months ago was too convenient to not be suspicious of a setup. But I had ignored her, dismissing her conspiracy theories. She had seen through Alex and Claire's inappropriate relationship early on, which was why she kept warning me. After the investigation, I filed a lawsuit against Alex and his accomplices. With solid evidence, Alex was ordered to return all fraudulently obtained money and compensate me for damages to my reputation and mental suffering. Due to the large amount involved, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. From an unemployed drifter to a seemingly perfect man, he ultimately returned to square one, even worse off than before. Claire was left with their child but couldn't support herself, eventually reduced to washing feet for a living. Whether that involved gray area services remains unknown. Later, I lost the baby due to an unstable heartbeat. Surprisingly, I wasn't sad but rather somewhat relieved. I never dated again, focusing all my attention on work. I quickly achieved success in my career, becoming a well-known manga artist. Jenny also remained single, accompanying me on random trips during her vacations. Time flew by, and by the time we approached retirement age, we had seen almost all the country's scenery. That day, the sunset painted the sky in sheets of evening glow. Lying in a rocking chair, I teased Jenny, why don't you date? Is it fun just wandering around with me all the time? Look, we blinked and got old wasted all that time, didn't we? The old skin on her face quivered, as if frightened. Give me a break. She said the previous incident still gave her chills even after waking from that nightmare. She said she couldn't trust men anymore. I smiled faintly, is that so? Isn't it? Tell me, how could men be more reliable than friends? After exchanging glances, we burst into hearty laughter together.